Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. It's Tuesday, and that can mean only one thing. It is time for the SquadChat Fallujah, and as you can see, I'm joined by many of the level design and environment team today. How are you, gents?
Hi.
No.
So we've got
Good.
Tim, who is the OW Worlds Director, Axton, Technical Artist. How do you do?
Hello.
We have Andre, or slash Zeno, as you may know him in Discord, as level designer. And we are
Hi.
joined by the beautiful face of Assis, just stalwart and concrete. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good.
Excellent. Thank you for taking the time to join me again, gents. We had to reschedule Thursday, so sorry about that. Um, but we released the big developer blog last week of Road to Fallujah, which you guys beautifully crafted. That's actually me saying that from a personal standpoint, as I haven't been with the team since the very creation of Fallujah, and getting that background has been super helpful for me. But the amazing shots that were in there, the stories. So, with that being said, how daunting of a task has this been from a team standpoint? And were there any significant lessons that you learned throughout the process?
I would big yes, big yes. As many of you guys know, this isn't our first map, but it was the first map of this kind of scale and detail level, and I hope we portrayed that well in the Road to Fallujah Part Two. Um, so the thing that we basically had to do in order to make this map work is really collaborate as a team. Where in the past some of our maps were kind of 2 or 3 person efforts. This was like an 8 person effort. Um, and so the kind of the importance of going through all of the steps methodically, that include like pre-production in terms of like getting everything set and listed, going through the level design planning, the environmental art planning. Play testing was a huge difference for this map. We basically didn't push anything past phase 1 until it was play tested, where before a lot of times we would basically, the community that played the map was the play testers, and now we took an extra step of working there. And then we would go to the phase 2 for environment art. We would polish with details and then optimize the map. So it was a collaborative effort, and I not only want to thank the guys that are here on the chat with us, Adam, Andre, and Roger, but also Chris, who was the level designer that originally did Road to Fallujah Part One. Dave was the producer at the early days. We had an environment team that included Jacek and Piotr, Tristan, Dustin, and Dan. So you can see it was a real big team effort, and it was a great opportunity, but it also involved a lot more of the planning and divvying out tasks and making sure that we could all work together. This was also the first map, and I think we can go into more detail later. This is the first map that we actually split up. So as a player, you won't notice it, but it's actually in 5 different parts in terms of how we designed and created the map. So the other things that we took away in terms of the challenges is the tech art and the environment art. So maybe Roger and Adam can touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, the obviously it was a big challenge. We were looking at different forms of planning and how to approach the level design and the environment aspect of it. And the biggest thing we also had to look into was the optimization side. So, it was a great challenge. It gave us an opportunity to look at how we can take our levels and our maps to the next step and also learn a lot of lessons. And I think the significant ones were mostly on the planning side. We also had to look into how we're actually going to optimize this map. We had to come up with a new pipeline and a workflow, how we analyze the maps and how we, gather the data and what we do when we analyze the data and what other techniques we can use. So,
Yeah,
yep.
it really transformed our entire workflow for sure. It's like a completely different kind of thing than we had previously done in terms of development. The map is going to look similar to a couple maps that we've done, but it's also really much like its own thing, and that was not easy to just like bring that out of thin air, especially considering how accurate it was. Like it was pretty daunting at first to see that we had like this massive full-size real-life city instead of just the PR map that we originally started on, for sure.
Very cool. So one of the Fallujah's most significant differences as a map, like you say, compared to others we find in Squad, is it is a closer knit urban environment rather than vast expanses of open land. So do you think this will have significant impact on how players approach rounds, and if so, how so?
I think I can touch on that a little bit. Fallujah is a massive city. It is. We have gone with a half scale compared to the real world city because it's hard to optimize the city for, and so not just make it big to be big, but also have consistent gameplay and have that in mind. So you're not just looking through empty buildings for the entire match. That's also a big thing we're focusing on in terms of. We have a lot of enterable buildings, but they have much more of a focus now than I think some of our older city maps. It's on the flow of them in terms of movement, and we focus a lot more about having meaningful engagement inside of buildings and between buildings. I can probably bring it up here if you
switch over.
Yeah. So scale-wise, this is the kind of downtown central area of the map. But the expanse, let me see here. That's a little bit.
Just so everyone's aware, this is within the editor's shots that Zeno is streaming out to us right now. So there may be a little bit of a stutter. It's a big map.
I don't have the beefiest machine now since I'm working from home. So. Let's see here. There you go.
One of the things that was mentioned within Roadmap to Fallujah Part 2 was trying to avoid fatigue for the players. I was quite interested by that when I was reading it. What's the thought process behind that, in a way?
The idea is that we don't want to make a full massive city and it's just the copy-paste building throughout the entire thing. Making a unique building for every street would be very hard in terms of scope and the team size, but we have managed to make it out in districts which have when you're traversing through the city, you will be able to not just have the exact same combat. Some areas of cities are more super close knit, like very close quarter fighting. Some will open it up. You have longer, maybe vehicles would have a bigger role there. So each area of the city will have a very distinct feel to it as you move across. That's what at least we hope we can kind of recreate though for the player. So you have more of an outskirts city with farming and more hilly landscape. You have the bridges leading into the city coming out here, and then you have. I think this is the old town area, very very dense, kind of multi-story buildings. A lot of verticality in terms of that. There's gonna be deadly street crossings and intense fighting inside of the houses and also between the houses. You can see there's a lot of different elements that go in here. You have a bus stop here. Sorry if I'm stuttering a little bit on my stream here. It is my computer is struggling.
Yeah, I think the doubled up streams probably don't help either.
Yeah. But as you can see, there's a lot of elements to the city here that you will be able to reverse. And also the POIs are very well kind of spaced out, so you'll be able to, it's not. You'll be able to have flanking options between the POIs. You'll be able to kind of set up your strategies for both defense and offense, and use the kind of the areas of depending on often which faction you play will come into play here in terms of where you want to position your troops throughout the map. Like the insurgent might be using some hidden elements on the map to traverse. They might be using rooftops to get around. While the U.S. forces, for example, they probably want to set up on more long range areas of the map.
And talking of POIs or points of interest, within the blog there was a very specific part about that, and we showed off a top-down view of the map. Were there specific changes how you approached POIs to Fallujah compared to other maps that we've made in the past?
Yeah, I think we really want to make them feel like different and more focused instead of and having them designed as an area compared to maybe just a certain element of the POI. So the POI can feel like this is a specific district of the city, and there might be a center point of that, which might be a taller building that has interiors, or there like the mosque have a very specific feature with the compound around it, and there's more open areas. So what we really want to make sure that each area tells story, and putting some story into it. Maybe something happened here earlier that's kind of portrayed through the environment art, and
I'm not sure if everybody caught on actually, but when we were doing the Road to Fallujah Part 2, the pose to kind of screenshots that were set up in the very beginning there, kind of the wallpaper looking ones, were meant to be sort of tellings of some of those stories in some of those spots on the map.
Yeah.
So that gives like a little bit of an idea of kind of what the environmental storytelling thing is supposed to be. It's battles that have happened and stories that have been told.
So talking about those shots and the real life references that we used, or you guys used, to create the map, did you learn any interesting tidbits or stories or of battles, and using them to influence the blog post?
Well, not just the blog post, obviously, but the map creation and planning. Yeah. The blog post came after the map, but yeah, no, we get what you mean, Chris. One of the biggest things that we do on all of the maps, to be honest, is reference gathering. In fact, we often joke, what did we do before Google Earth, Google Street View? Especially in dangerous areas like this, you can't even go visit. To some extent, but we spent a lot of time gathering references. So Roger and the environment team would focus on the architecture and the building look, the materials, all that kind of stuff. And then Andre and I would look at the usability of the buildings. Like, are there things that we like that building can offer gameplay? And then typically what both teams would do is we would kind of pull all those references together and decide we like this bit on this building and this bit on this building, and we just kind of like create a new building amalgamation from those ideas that level design likes and environment art likes. And then once we kind of have what we call our kit of buildings, then it's up to the two teams, because this is another collaboration between environment art and level design, is to decide how do we want to tell stories in the map so it doesn't feel like it's just urban block after urban block. And so the reference photos really helped with that, because there were photos from the actual Battle of Fallujah and just photos from the destruction that we were like, we can do that. Like, we can recreate that scene, not exactly, and basically tell a story. And so one thing that we're excited about that you guys will see when you get to play is if you're fighting over a POI, that POI will have some kind of what we set the stage for the story. And so there's a helicopter crash, or there's a tanker on fire, or there's a refugee camp, or there's obviously a marketplace, and those are all situations that we want the player to feel really immersed in. And then you add in the gunfire and the vehicles and the helicopters and anything else that the players bring to the story, and we hope that will be a really immersive environment. just kind of a leg above what we've done on previous maps in terms of that storytelling.
Yeah, especially as it's such an iconic area. Give it
Right.
that little extra push.
And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because not only is it iconic from the real world battles that have taken place in Fallujah, but for the players that have been playing Project Reality from the early days, we wanted to bring some of the elements of that map. So in terms of the 4-lane highway with ditch in the middle, the refugee camp used to be a humanitarian camp, the T buildings that everyone loves, and
Yeah,
of
the
course you
dueling
guys have already.
Ts.
Yeah, a lot of these buildings you've seen because we've used them on, Mutaha and Talil and stuff, but they were created for Fallujah. It's just Fallujah took longer, so the buildings ended up getting used on other maps in the process. But we wanted to, represent the Project Reality version. We wanted to represent real world, and then also just make sure the player feel like they're really immersed into that environment.
And to add a little bit on that is that when taking the Project Reality map, what we wanted to do is more that we want to recreate the feeling that a lot of that map gave, with the different elements of the map, and kind of make it bigger and better. So maybe it's not like identical to what you remember from that map, but there is a lot of the elements is there to kind of give that same feeling, hopefully in a better way than a very old game. No.
No, I'm sure plenty of people, including myself, I'm looking forward to getting out and trying it. Being Squad's most urban environment to date, are we likely to see more cities from other regions of the world, perhaps? Some firefight action on high-rise apartments or skyscrapers, something like that?
Probably not skyscrapers. But for those that have played Squad from the early days, they'll kind of, this will make more sense as I explain our process. Is we work really closely with game design. So you've done, Chris, you've done several interviews with our game designer, Tom. So level design and game design work very closely together. And what we try to do is we try to give all the different aspects of the battlefield to the players. And so we often try to make sure that we're always creating urban environments, rural environments, desert environments, forested environments, as you guys have seen on the roadmap, amphibious environments. And so now that this urban environment is done, we've already transitioned to some non-urban environment maps that you'll be seeing in the coming months. So, obviously all the stuff that we've learned creating this incredibly dense, detailed urban Fallujah will be beneficial when we create towns and cities on these new maps, but they won't be urban centric simply because we just finished a very urban centric map, and we want to make sure that the player base is, given a nice variety of map types.
Yeah,
we want time to learn the lessons too, as well. Like we need to see the map out in the wild a little bit to get an idea of whether we succeeded or not. So,
yeah.
Absolutely.
And like most of our maps, I think, we're always looking at the being played and always open to changes down the line. So maybe a V1 version of Fallujah, might change over time, like small bits here and there that might get changed out. But so it's always, most of our maps are pretty living when it comes to that stuff. It's not like a hard set release. We always try to change it based on how it's going, and we're always learning, and there's new things we learned that we can make it better.
And it definitely helps to keep things fresher from a gameplay perspective. Pardon me, sorry. Going forward, can we expect to see maps showing off this level of detail? So when people were looking at through the article that we released, there was one image in particular that they spotted, and I saw a couple of questions floating around on the internet. The watermelon image. Gentlemen, can you shoot the watermelons? This is a very important question.
Adam, do you want to take that?
Well, yeah, you can. They will probably not explode, but they will bleed a little bit. So if you want some watermelon blood, then shoot the watermelons.
We were so close to Game of the Year. So close.
Yeah. Should have worked harder on that watermelon tech, to be honest. Like, yeah.
That and toilet flushing. We'll have that in the next version.
We gotta really flesh out the details there.
Yeah. So at the end of the blog, we also talked about the optimization. I think it's very, very crucial part of game development, as you don't want to play something that's chugging or non-optimized, really. And as this environment is so crammed with these fantastic assets, is one of the substantial aspects to cover. Were there any moments during the development of Fallujah that were particularly tough to combat, or were there moments, say, like with engine upgrades, where you freed up a lot more resources and
both?
There was a lot of wins? Okay, well, let's hear both sides.
Yeah, Roger will probably have some stuff to say here too, but for me, like, we got some really good gains with one of our engine upgrades to 423 that basically made the map run twice as good. It was really, really beneficial. However, as Roger can probably attest to, that doesn't mean that it fixed all of our problems. And we definitely had a lot of stuff to contend with to get it to run acceptably, like a lot. So yeah, I'll leave it to you, Roger.
Yeah, there was the engine upgrade. While it was absolutely amazing, it gave us a lot of tools and a lot of improvements as well. Just right off the bat, there was a lot of stuff to fix. Like, it wasn't just a, do the engine upgrade and everything is completely fine. You don't have to look at everything. We had to go back and fix a lot of issues, but we also learned lessons from fixing those to, put forward in the future, so we're not making similar mistakes, or just some things just flat out break sometimes. Like, that's just game development.
You can't always control it. The lessons were definitely very valuable, though. I really can't kind of sum up how much we've learned over the past 2 years. 3 years. I don't know when we first started on Fallujah, but it's been a while. Like, and we have learned a ton. It is actually probably one of the major driving forces that has really improved our workflows, for sure.
Yeah, and like, before we fully started optimizing Fallujah as well, obviously, because it was such a long ongoing process and there were multiple teams working on it, like, we had constantly new assets being rolled in as level design. We're improving things as well. We started optimizing, but before that, we actually started optimizing other maps and getting prepared for Fallujah. Like, we were learning a lot throughout that process, and Fallujah was kind of like the ultimate test, because that is probably the densest and kind of like the detailed map that we've got so far.
Well, what's the next highest object count on a map? I can't remember.
I think it's like Nava with like 26,000.
Yeah, and Fallujah, I believe, at its highest point had 55K.
No, it was like more like 80.
Really? Oh wow, yeah. It was very bad for a while. Like, and obviously, like, that was before we had fully, gotten into the optimization stage, but it's significantly more involved of a process than we've ever had with any other map, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And like, we've established workflows now that we can use in the future as well, but also it means we can kind of push the detail a little bit further for other maps as well. Yeah. Especially future maps. Like, we might not be making another, like, 100% Fallujah, like the same density or anything, but we definitely can take that level of detail and the atmosphere.
Yeah, all of the optimization stuff and all of the lessons that we learned can be applied pretty easily to any map. They don't have to be like a massive dense one like Fallujah. They're just best practices, really. Yeah,
that sounds pretty good. Like, meld it to the size you kind of want, or a smaller map running a lot smoother. Sounds good.
It's just a giant balancing act, basically.
Yeah. Well, thank you, gents. That was the questions I had. Let's actually take it to the real experts, the people in the chat. So if you join Squad, you guys are the experts. I'm dissing myself, don't worry. If you want to ask us a question, Join Squad within the Twitch chat. I'll be trying to keep an eye on the other streams that we do have available, but that'll be our main question source. As I saw, Zeno has been keeping an eye on the chat, getting his haircut, opinions and stuff commented on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Fuzzhead asking, when do we get helicopters on Fallujah?
Oh boy.
Oh, try to derail the stream straight away.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. So like, just to be real with you guys, it's already like been a really big thing trying to get the map to run well with infantry only and ground vehicles. I'm gonna do my utmost to like make sure that the map runs as good as it possibly can, and if that includes running well enough to have helicopters on it, then good. And if it doesn't, then there's only so much we can do with a map this dense. And I would really, really like to see helicopters on it, but it's going to be one of those reality situations where it's it's the reality of what we can do.
We do have a couple. We have a couple leads that might get us there. Like some techniques.
We do have some potential. There are some things that we could look into that would maybe make it possible, but they are unproven so far. So we have to do that research.
We're gonna have to need it for when we get investors.
Okay, we got a question from @JamesKurt. When are the playtests for the map? So we've been running a CPT team, closed playtesters group. We've actually been working on expanding that in the background. We've been reaching out to some communities, and we've got a couple more tests to run on Fallujah, plus other maps in the future. Keep an eye out though if we do open that up to a more public-wide area. Did you guys have anything that you wanted to add about playtesting at all?
Yeah, no, we want
to. Just to be clear, the playtests for Fallujah are done, and we want to thank the CBT team that helped. We finished those up in November, and since November we've been optimizing since the playtest part was completed. But as Crispy also mentioned, we have several maps that are going to be going through this same workflow, and we're going to need that CPT team available to help us. And you guys will get first, play on these new maps, new environments, be able to contribute to the gameplay and just the feel of it. I think there's already some information in the Road to Fallujah Part 2. But if I'm mistaken, we had to pull it and we'll add it. Crispy will give us more information on that.
Yep. Yes, it was pulled just because we didn't have the our selection ready at the time. Question from Parsian119. I hope I'm not butchering that. Will there be layers with West Fallujah part of the map, like in PR?
That's a good question. I think probably have to refer that to Fuss. He usually is the one that kind of dictate a lot of the daily gameplay layers and stuff. We designed very much the city to be
approachable.
Sandbox. It's kind of a hybrid sandbox in terms of that, because we have a lot of game modes, and we want to make sure the map is basically a multi-tool that we use for the different game modes. So there definitely are areas of the map that be very good for
I think Tom's in the chat, right? So
he should be. I'm trying to see if he's
if Tom wants to make a level, we do have West Fallujah existing. So it has the starting point for the US is a HESCO base, just like in the pre-PR map. We don't have the arched gate. That was one thing that environment archers never got around to. We might get around to it later.
I was sad about that. That was like my favorite place.
The dual highway, we have the mosque, and then it ends with a we call it a police station, but in PR it was a compound. So that route exists, and if Tom has the time, he can definitely put maybe a skirmish layer together for that.
Get to it, Tom. I'll make you a ticket right now.
It goes a little bit back that we have a very high flexibility, more than almost any map I can think of with Fallujah, and we can make layers, until we fall asleep at night. It's there's going to be a lot of
different ways to approach it for sure.
And maybe new game modes, modders can bring up.
And there are areas on the map that we have like a TV station and a bus stop and gas stations that aren't actually POIs, but if Tom wants to make them POIs, he has that ability to do that. So and you can definitely use it as a verbal, like, hey, let's meet up at the gas station or the bus stop or whatever, and as you play on the map, you'll still have those references.
There was a lot of care given to landmarks for sure, especially like navigating the map.
Yeah, very cool.
We don't want to get lost.
Yeah, it's a big city.
especially with what could be a lot of similar buildings in between, dotting it with those landscape moments.
Yeah, I think we've actually done a pretty good job of it not feeling too samey, I think. I've had a couple times where I've just been like, in the editor or playing a playtest and been walking around the city, and it very much feels different in different areas, which is cool. I'm glad we were able to accomplish that.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things I think in a map is to make areas feel unique and different.
Yeah, especially when you're, when it comes down to it, we're using the same, 20 building models for basically everything. So it's very, you gotta finesse it a little bit sometimes.
Most importantly, I have to point out there are soccer fields on the map.
Hey,
Just
saying.
Is that a little Easter egg you slipped in there, or?
Yeah.
Every map's gonna have a soccer field.
My signature.
Yeah.
A question from Dogzilla. Did you guys make the map with breachable doors in mind? So, tough one, perhaps.
Sort of yes, sort of no. Like, we have a lot of enterable buildings. Not every building is enterable, unfortunately, due to the massive size of the map. But there are enterable doors. We don't currently use a breaching system, though, as you guys know.
Yep.
Right now, I don't think it's planned, mostly because if I were to count the amount of doors in Fallujah, it would be close to 20,000 doors. And that's a lot of doors to place that are like, and unless we have some sort of automatic solution for it, which right now we don't, that would be like a lot of door placing.
And
so,
I'd just get lost breaching through all the doors if it was actually instead of playing the objective.
I'd like to be able to slam the door in people's face, but that's just me.
Plus, just to throw out the optimization piece of that is, every movable object is dynamic.
You also have to handle all those doors, on the network, and it's a nightmare.
We think it's more important to have helicopters on the map, 100 players on the map, than to have breachable doors. Yeah, and it's a trade-off. That's basically what it comes down to.
Everything's a trade-off.
Next question comes from Forest02. What kind of ground vehicles will there be at the start?
Well, it's too bad Tom isn't here.
But I think a wide variety. I would say all the variety, maybe except choppers for initial release. There's gonna be, I think there's different layers. Will have different elements like focus, I guess. So maybe have like a heavy armor layer for it. But that's all possible. Like, it's not exclusive. Like, we didn't design this map to be exclusive.
The vehicle set isn't limited really at all, except for helicopters. So it could be anything.
Maybe one day.
I'd really, really like to see it someday. And if we get to that point, it means that we're like wizards at optimizing. So I'd like to get to that point too.
We've got another question from NotMelter30, and because of some of the images that we released, they're asking, will there be a night version of Fallujah to play on?
Well, I'm going to answer that with a solid maybe. We're implementing some new stuff in the next patch or two that should potentially solve some of the issues that we've been having with night maps like gamma cheating. We'll see. But if it's reliable, then I see no reason why we shouldn't have them. It's not a crazy amount of dead time. It's just we don't want it to be abusable, and we don't want it to be like a slog or a bad experience. So the game needs to be ready for it, basically.
Yeah, and layers would have to be designed for it in terms of.
It has to be incorporated.
You don't want to walk around a 4-kilometer city where just looking for enemies without being able to see them. So, finding out a balance there is it's going to be a challenge, but it's doable down the line.
We've got a very good question from Moydog here, asking, has the map been developed with 100 players in mind? And do we expect... well, we've kind of answered the vehicle front, but was there during the development the idea of, right, this needs to accommodate the 100 players?
Yes. From the beginning, we knew Fallujah was going to be our 1.0 exit early access map. And with that, the idea was to have 100 players. So we're still, that question is still to be answered in terms of like, have we pulled it off or not? But it was designed for that. And that's why we can still have all the vehicles and the urban combat and still have enough players to field all the squads and make the map feel like it's a city. You know, there'll be enough shooting and noises and stuff going on that it feels like a good urban environment to fill it out. So fingers crossed, the optimization is good. You know, obviously, if you have like the minimum hardware requirements, you might struggle a little bit with Fallujah. We just want to be very straightforward with that.
Yeah, it will be
But,
heavier than other maps to some extent, but ideally, and it will get better over time as well. I'm not done optimizing yet. We're still going to be trying stuff over time. But I run it flawlessly. I don't really have any performance problems in game. The editor's a bit heavier, but so there's probably going to be a bit of overhead, but we've gotten it down as far as we can, basically.
And this is probably a good time, real quick, to shout out to our audio guys, our special effects guys, our programmers, because some of the playtests that we had, performance issues were not actually map related. They were, you know, smoke and dust and audio looping and things like that. And so it's been a real OWI effort.
It's been pretty like multidiscipline, almost more multidiscipline than we've ever had in terms of like solving problems. Yeah.
I had one other question I wanted to answer. I saw in chat here from White Wolf. With such a dense map, how did you make easy to traverse and not feel like a maze when trying to move between objectives? That is, you know, one of the things we really very early on had like, this is something we need to solve. Like this we don't want it to be just massive, you know, several kilometers of maze and just not having kind of walking between kind of people walking past each other 5 meters away. You know, we wanted to have more, so we did implement more pathing than we have on a lot of maps. So there might be several areas of the map where kind of are more led down paths instead of just having the full freedom to roam. So yeah, that's we have more thought through than you probably have seen in several of other maps. So yeah,
it was all designed out.
Yeah,
very thoroughly.
And there's also, you know, not just inside of the POIs, but also how you traverse this kind of spider web of POIs and how those connect with. So basically, most all the POIs have, you know, thought out pathing between each other, all its neighbors.
If you are a fan of parkour, you're gonna love this map because we
have lots of opportunities for that.
There's hidden paths, definitely. A lot of exciting like kind of side things you can find and like discover and learn. So yeah, learning this map is going to be a challenge for a lot of people in terms of, you know, finding cool new ways of traversing the map.
I think you've just issued a challenge for content creators to make the first
Who
parkour
gets
video.
The best, you know, parkour compilation video.
We've got a bit of a good question here from H3 Killer saying, what sort of tech was used on Fallujah that could be used on the older maps to improve performance or content? I know moving forward, we've got a lot of new things that we're working on. Is there any potential of taking lessons learned from this development and applying them to previous maps?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we mentioned it earlier a bit, but just to go into more detail, like a specific thing that we have on Fallujah is prefabs. Previously, if we wanted to have like, you know, some sort of building or like even a compound that we could like, you know, take, build, and then replace a bunch of times, we would either have to put it in a blueprint, which is kind of UE4's way of combining objects, which is not great for performance. Or we had to like, you know, merge it together into one object, which has its own pitfalls that I won't get into, but there's a ton. And prefabs basically just let us do that with no hassle. It was something we hadn't used before, and it just works, and it's pretty awesome. It allows us to just like group objects and then, you know, slap that group down wherever we want. We can edit the group and it updates all of the groups that we placed. It's great. And we can use that on any map. It works anywhere, anytime, for anything. And that was just a solid win.
Awesome.
There were also things, it was interesting as we optimized Fallujah, we actually found some things that we had been doing that weren't a good way of doing things. And so we were able to go back and fix those on other maps and see the improvements. as well.
Yeah, we learned a lot of that for optimization. Like we found like 5 different things where we were like, wait a second, we've been doing this the whole time, and it was the wrong way to do it.
We thought it was the way to do it, but it wasn't.
Yeah, and
I think
yeah.
No, sorry. I was gonna say, I think one of the biggest things that we've learned is like there is no kind of like one way of doing things. Like you can totally take multiple techniques and methods and approaches to optimizing a certain thing, and you can mix them up. You can mix and match them, and it entirely depends of the area that you're working on. So like you can see Falluja's pretty dense, but there are some areas where there's negative space and areas of rest. So if there was like say a lot of foliage in one area but not many buildings, that's a different approach that you take towards optimizing that, as opposed to optimizing blocks and blocks of just dense urban buildings. Yeah.
So with all that optimization talk, time to destroy it with Proplex Games' question of will we ever see material destruction in Squad similar to other games in the genre?
If you mean like Battlefield, probably not. And I've said that kind of publicly a bunch of times before. It's just not achievable with what we have right now. If maybe we started the game completely from scratch, then there's a possibility that we could use some of the new Unreal Engine features for it. But as the game is now, with how long of a legacy it has, it's kind of too difficult for us to add in at this point. We'd have to kind of like go from the ground up with it.
Yeah, completely.
Part of that is, I think, in terms of it's a very like game development.
Yeah, it's very common in game development to have
question.
that happen.
It is everything in game development is a trade-off.
Yeah,
you only have performance usually the big kicker there in terms of you only have a set amount of processing power, and you decide what you're going to spend that on.
Yeah,
and if we spend, we want full destruction. Every little chip can be like every little pillar and whatever blown away. That's tearing into other things in the game in terms of maybe scale of the map, scale of the players. And maybe simplistic environments need to be made instead of like detailed and realistic ones. So it's always going to be trade-off, and we, I think, always have focused on the big teamwork elements. So
the parts that are
so in terms of destruction, yes, it is a very cool thing, and we, of course, if we could add it, we definitely would.
Yeah, it would in a heartbeat.
But I think when it comes down to it, it's more important for Squad as a game to have a lot of that full scale combat feeling with a lot of players, and they're all players, not then
If the choice was between like a 2-kilometer map or a 1-kilometer map that has destruction and a 4 or a 6-kilometer map that has no destruction, then we feel that it suits Squad better to have that bigger play space and that more variety and that kind of larger room to maneuver, because that's what Squad is about to us. It's not just about that.
And player count comes into
and the player count and everything really. If it's a trade-off, and we chose kind of the other trade-off because we felt it was more valuable to Squad at the time.
Saying that you put it as like the core of the game is not this tight-knit sort of arena shooter walking.
No, it's it's not meant to be
people.
Battlefield. It's meant to be kind of a sort of in-between sort of thing. It's not fully that Twitch shooter moment-to-moment sort of thing. It's also got that strategic component, and that's a big part of it.
Being tactical.
With friends.
I love that, actually. Schecter DLX asking, and feel free to shut him down, any itty-bitty hints about Black Coast or the 2021 mystery map?
Ooh, Andre.
I think like without since it's out there, and we know the map, you've seen a little screenshot of it. I think it's fair to go a tiny bit into it. It is gonna be an amphibious focus map in terms of that we have a lot of water elements in it, so it's a coastal map. That's a lot of it. It's gonna be it's definitely gonna be a very it's not gonna be an urban map, but it's not gonna be
we should mention it's being designed in a very similar way to Fallujah, with a proper kind of movement block out and a lot of thought given into maneuvering and all that.
We're definitely taking these lessons that we learned from from Fallujah and bringing those in terms of like how we structure it. Maybe even though it's not a city, the same like design elements can be found there.
You can still use them. Yeah, the movement stays true whether it's a city or a forest or whatever it is. Yeah.
Awesome. We've had 2 questions about Lashkar Valley. Just going back to a recent map that we released. Ivor Lol wants to know what did you guys think of the design and optimization done for Lashkar Valley? It's an odd question, really.
Yeah. Roger and I worked on it a bit, and I made a lot of the map as well. I worked on the Aussie mod. It was not that terrible. It's a bit high in some aspects on triangles, like polygons, because of all the foliage. But that was one of the biggest hurdles there. There wasn't a whole lot else that was really out of the ordinary with it. But definitely, like, I wanted it to have like a longer kind of view distance. Obviously it's still got fog, unfortunately, but I wanted it to feel a bit more large than the average squad map, which it definitely like made it a bit harder to optimize, but it wasn't too crazy.
And leading into that, Mr. Bigger Gun brings up the tunnel networks being removed from Lashkar Valley.
Okay, yeah.
Was that because of optimization or gameplay reasons?
It was a part way of optimize. It was both basically. I probably want to go back and re-add them at some point.
I would really like to
maybe
have
not the highest priority, but I think we all want to have them, but we want to redesign them a bit. And,
they were really empty at the time. Like they had no props in them. They were just like empty tunnels in like kind of a spiderwebby pattern. And we basically decided like if we wanted to do caves, we wanted to do them like properly. Now that we have all this new knowledge about like player flow and all that. So for the time being, and we actually still have them. They're not deleted completely, but we took them out and moved them into a different level, just in case we ever want to bring them back in.
Back to the question that somebody had about Fallujah being a maze. One of the first things we determined was that those were just a maze. It was really hard to figure out how to get out. And you wouldn't come out necessarily where you wanted to come out. It was just they didn't lead anywhere. So it's something we might, like Adam said, we might entertain for future maps or future version of Lashkar Valley. But we wanted to make it fun no matter where you were on that map, and we didn't feel like the caves were at that level.
Yeah, it just didn't feel up to the rest of the map, really.
Yeah. Definitely, it's not out of the question to add them later, but this was always priority. In terms of going back and fixing all old stuff and adding new stuff.
Understandable. We've had a couple of questions about civilians on Fallujah, but Great K47 specifically asked, will the ambient sounds include citizens in their homes? No, it's more of an audio question, but
it's a good
trying
question.
to think. There may be some like Easter eggs or something. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I haven't poked through the audio layer too thoroughly. I know there's a lot of ambient sound, but it is meant to be like a war-torn city, so I doubt that you would hear like a bunch of civilians around, like it's a thriving city sort of thing, because it's in the middle of a battle. But yeah, maybe.
Yeah, wouldn't be out of the question, but you might find places where that is relevant.
Yeah.
We're not going to end up with any clips like before where the voices in the doghouse.
Yeah. That was amazing. That was a great book.
We've got a lot of questions coming in. I'll just say to the chat, not specific to sort of level design and environment. So we wouldn't be able to really give you the best answers to some of those. If you can keep them kind of focused. We've got another 10 minutes scheduled here, so we'll be taking a couple more. Get them in while you can. Babe Roller asking, will the buildings have interiors? If so, how detailed?
We'll let Roger jump on that one.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of buildings with interiors, but obviously that's like you can go inside of the buildings themselves. And I believe there is a couple buildings on the POIs, like the landmarks, that have some interiors to a certain degree, but it's definitely not every single building in the level.
Some of them will be pretty sparse. Some of them will be a bit more detailed, depending on what they are.
Because the important thing is, while like interiors, they look great, but we also got to consider the gameplay implications of it makes moving indoors extremely painful.
And it also it's definitely a big performance consideration as well. Like I said, the object count was already through the roof, and adding a ton of objects to every interior would probably double or triple it. And there are ways around that, but we still need to look into them, like I said. So
I think for the places we have detailed more interiors are POIs. So those are the areas where players mostly will spend their time, especially interiors.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can expect
it's
more.
strategic.
You can expect more detailing basically as you get closer to the different POIs.
Yeah.
Awesome. Dogzilla asks, because of some of the imagery we put out, are we going to get weather effects for Fallujah?
Yes and no. So we have, just like Mutaha, there's a sandstorm layer. And I really wanted to make it dynamic, but it just didn't end up having the time to. I think I might at some point if I, am able. But there are static weather effects, yes. There's a sandstorm layer for sure, and it's just kind of similar to the one on Mutaha, but looks a little different. I used some reference photos of real sandstorms that happened during some of the battles. It's a bit more yellow in Fallujah than it is in Mutaha. But yeah, so hopefully that answers the question.
No, cool. When we put it out, there was some rumblings. People thought dynamic weather systems and stuff, but
we would love to have that. To be clear, that's actually would be a really cool thing. But it's just another one of those things where it's a trade-off for performance, and B, it's something that we have to actually put other things aside in order to devote resources to. So it's all things in time.
Yep, absolutely. Emmy saw you. I think I've said that correctly. Any underground areas on Fallujah at the moment?
Yes, I will leave it at that.
Yeah.
There you go. That's all you're getting.
They exist.
Yes, there is. You have to find them yourself, and
they're not marked on the map.
Ah.
Are they? Yeah.
You might have actually already seen them in some of the screenshots, though, if you look closely.
Yeah, there are entrances somewhere. I actually had a question. I saw a couple people asking it, and I wanted to address it. The fog. I know that people don't like the fog, but it is a necessary evil. And I want to say this so I can clip it and put it somewhere else later when people ask this question. But there are optimization issues with it. So fog hides things disappearing in the background for optimization. And there is a gameplay element to it as well, because some of the maps are designed in such a way where having infinite view distance would just mean that you could sit on top of a mountain somewhere with Bradley and tow everything. So there are kind of two parts to that, and it's a constant balancing act, and it's honestly, I hate it, but it's something I have to do. And if it were up to me, I would just take all the fog off and make it look as natural as possible. But sometimes it doesn't go like that.
We always try to push it as far as we can feel. Some lighting layers are definitely
sandstorm and stuff. Yeah, sandstorm, it's close up to you. There's artistic elements to it too. But we always do, like you said, we always push it as far as we physically can before the map performance starts to degrade, or before gameplay starts to degrade.
Keeping it as smooth as possible for everyone.
Yes.
Where is that question? It was really good, actually. Yes, that Max asking, how refined are the outskirts of Fallujah? Will we see caps and firefights happening out there, or is it more keeping it... Okay.
Yeah. Pretty cool, actually. Areas.
Yeah. Since we included the entire city, you will have a gradual kind of approach to the city in terms of density and stuff. So at the outskirts where, maybe the main bases would be on some layers, you would definitely kind of feel that feeling of, pushing into a city and just denser and denser and denser and denser. And the area around Fallujah are either along the river is pretty lush, there's a lot of farming and groves and all that stuff. So but the eastern side is definitely more desert. So you're probably gonna see a little bit differences on the map there that we kind of took inspiration from real life. So yeah, definitely. We have POIs that are solely focused on the outskirts of the city. Yep. So probably some invasion layers. You're gonna have some cool fighting into the city there, where you can actually actively feel the difference in combat as you move in. And yeah, there's definitely that kind of variety, and different sides of the map will have different outskirts. Yeah.
Very cool. looking forward to it. Crispy, can you eat some of the mustard in your fridge? No. Well, maybe at the end. Just curious, question from Dogzilla123. Just curious, do you use or create your own tools in Unreal, or just use what is there?
Mix.
Be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a mix. We have a lot of in-house tools that we've made kind of for very purpose-specific stuff. So like, let's say a berm. Like we have a lot of berms on our map, like ditches, berms, things for cover for people. We have a blueprint that just like you just draw out a berm and it like perfectly offsets the terrain to match the kind of profile of the berm that you want. Stuff like that. We have a couple different level design tools like that, and obviously, like I mentioned before, the prefab thing is something that we brought in. It's a plugin, but mostly Unreal Engine is kind of meant to be pretty all-encompassing for the most part. I mean, obviously, there's stuff you're gonna have to pick up yourself, but the editor is a pretty good suite for doing everything we need to do.
Yeah, Unreal's,
Yeah, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
It is.
People use
I hate it sometimes, but it's powerful.
5-6 James Holden asking, with new amphibious vehicles being added, will the large North Island and Scorpo become playable? So not related to Fallujah, but yeah.
That's a good question. We did scrap it when we first released it. That was simply a quality thing where we felt like it differentiated too much compared to the rest of the map, and time we didn't have amphibious vehicles or helicopters, so it was simply an option of like, it's just draining performance without adding much, so we decided to cut that for the map. I could always say that I want to do it and go back and add it, but we have a lot of stuff down the plate. As you probably have seen our roadmap, there is a lot of stuff coming down the pipe. I'm working Black Coast right now, and that's going to be my focus going forward. But I'm always going back and tweaking all the maps and fixing bugs and all that stuff.
We're pretty much constantly improving the old maps.
And maybe not line. I can't say anything else than maybe.
No promises. It's a would be nice.
I would like to,
and
I really like to have it more as a infantry focused area of the map where you can have denser infantry combat maybe than the rest. But that's just future.
No commitments there, but for good reason. We getting into the last couple of questions here. Are there more cap zones in a single Fallujah layer? That comes from Cripex192.
Than normal?
I'm assuming,
Well, we try to stick with odd numbers, so you'll see 5 flags and 7 flags for the most part.
Yeah.
Sorry, could you just repeat that, Tim? Sorry, you broke up on my end.
Yeah.
The flag routes will have 5 flags or 7 flags for the most part, so pretty similar to other maps. It just kind of depends on how close together they are.
Okay. Alrighty. Trying to find some Fallujah specifics here. Unless you guys have seen any.
The shark does not have a name. Because I think somebody called it Sharky or something like. I don't know. It does not have a name.
Chat, name it.
You guys name it. I'll be down for that. I'll write it with a Sharpie in the forehead.
Sharky McSharkface.
Yeah, something like that.
Do you question from 404 username not found? Do you plan on expanding the skybox much, having like missiles arcing overhead like in other games?
Oh, like ambient effects in the skybox, or
not?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I mean, it's a cool idea. We could probably explore it, but I think you're going to be busy seeing that sort of stuff coming towards you from actual players.
We try to avoid that sort of stuff, actually, like any kind of ambient effect that looks like a gameplay effect, like any incoming like rounds or anything like that, or a plane, because we have the cast runs. It would kind of confuse people, I think.
Yeah, we did.
Interestingly enough, that's actually something that was left over from the PR days, where stuff was by intention not added. Like, a lot of games do, especially smaller scale games, they do a lot of ambient gunshots in the background, and effects going over and stuff like that. But one of the cool things about what PR did, and I think we fast forward with Squad, is that all the gunshots you hear and all the effects, the planes coming in, the artillery going off in the background, and the super distant, faded explosions. Those are all player generated stuff. Like that's all player generated.
Yeah.
And just that whole idea of like you can kind of distinguish like the explosions in the background and see Squad 3 on the map just like disintegrating.
Yeah.
That's like one of the cool things you can have in our game, is that whole like you are all players, you're all in it, and everything that happens is like actual player interactions on the map.
Mr. Bigger Gun coming in with Fallujah related question. What are your favourite POIs on the map, gentlemen? Do you have any specifics where you're like, this is where I like to hang out, this is my turf?
Tim, go first, maybe.
Soccer grounds.
If I had to pick one, I think it's Overpass.
Overpass is pretty cool, yeah.
Because it's so different than any other. It's basically a highway that goes over a slum.
Yeah.
So you fight on the highway, you fight below the highway, and it's a lot of parkour, and it's very vertical. It's a very not confined, but it's a very obvious little area. I would say the second favorite, just because it reminds me of the Project Reality, is the refugee camp. We have a pretty convincing refugee camp on the map where you get to go fight within it with a trench and a warehouse and all kinds of aid tents and things like that.
I would definitely
those would be my two.
Yeah, I think mine is the market. The market is really cool.
Yeah.
It's super close quarters, like very. It's claustrophobic, and it's very like, not a maze, but it's very dense. Like there's tons of different paths you can take, and I'm really excited to see what happens when you have like a full team on both sides, like just duking it out in that market. It's gonna be like insanity in there.
And that market is definitely a 2-layered vertical.
Yeah, there is a roof. The whole thing, like you could be up on the roof or you could be down in the market tunnels. I love that. I love that.
I think me would be probably biased, I have to say. It would be the mosque. It definitely would be the mosque.
Yeah, the mosque is kind of the crown.
Probably because I spent so much time on it. So I probably know every little corner of it. But the mosque, and actually Scary Hill. I think you'll see it when you get the map. If you have, there's actually in the Road to Fallujah 2, there's an overview of all the POIs. You can see the minimap there with all the POIs and the names there. Ascari Slums and Ascari Hills, which are on the northeast part of the map, I really enjoy mating. And that's my favorite.
By the way, before we forget, big thanks to Brendan and Jamie. Also, they're environment artists that joined us kind of late in the game, but Brendan specifically finished that mosque.
Yeah, that mosque.
They did a really good job on it.
Yeah, he really pulled that off.
Awesome. Roger, did you chime in with a favorite POI?
I think mine would probably be Compound. It's called Compound. When you get in there and you look at it, you might recognize it from somewhere. It's a really cool place to hang out. And second to that would probably be...
Yeah.
Go on.
I'm sure all the Milsim guys gonna love that when they first realize what it is.
All the people who know their stuff for sure will recognize it. Yeah.
Go ahead, Roger. You had one more, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably second to that is the market area. Like, just running through there in the alleys and stuff. It's pretty intense, especially when you got like an actual full-on fight over the objective with like most of the team there.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to this map going live, especially because I'm expecting a whole bunch of 24/7 servers just running Fallujah.
I think there'll be at least one. Yeah.
So I'm looking to get into the nitty gritty of all of these POIs, getting in with all the squads. I think this will just be the last question of the day. It's one I can answer. It's when will we get the chilled stream that I promised, where we get to sit around, we probably have a couple of drinks. I've not scheduled it, but the main thing is because I want us to all be in the same room, in a way. It's a lot more fun that way. and get people from different areas of different departments, so we can answer all different questions from you guys, rather than just a level design and environment or very focused stream like these. In fact, one more. Whoever's got a really good Fallujah question. Nothing up first light.
Well, there was one, Chris, that said, when is Fallujah releasing?
Yeah.
Be at 22. There you go.
Yep. Simple as that.
Still, as scheduled on the roadmap, we're looking at September 2nd. If there are any changes to that, we will be letting you know, as we have been keeping you in the loop. So get excited for that. Get it in your calendars. Take the time off work. Get ready. Do the chilled stream in Zeno's room. In fact,
I like that idea, actually. We should do.
Yeah, I would have brought the beer that was here, but everyone took it. I didn't even get any.
I'll bring the shark. Oh, the shark is here, so that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time out of your day to join me on the stream. I've certainly enjoyed it, and I'm sure the people at home have. We'll be uploading this. Get your comments into the YouTube comments, and we'll be answering them if we can, or I'll get them ready for another stream, perhaps. Any last words before we leave?
You gonna drink the mustard?
Oh my god.
Go on.
Okay.
Pressure is real.
I can't show the logo, can I? Let's actually take the Best Buy date on this.
Outro.
Hey.
It says 2019 on here. Right.
It's fine. It's mustard.
Oh no! This is not good. This is far more liquid than it needs to be. That's not mustard.
Did you shake it?
Just gonna drink the mustard juice.
Oh, I muted it.
Right, hold on.
Oh, there you go.
I'm gonna sacrifice my coffee cup here. Make sure.
Oh god. Oh no.
Uh,
I don't know why
so
you're
else
doing
you
that.
get a community manager that's dedicated.
Yeah.
This is gross. Don't say we're not professionals.
Oh boy.
Right, I'll do that.
Nice.
I dislike you all.
Yeah.
Right, that'll do it
Yes.
for today. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time. Be sure to follow our social channels. We'll see you in the Discord. Enjoy Squad. See you later, guys.
See you
See you
around.
guys.
See ya.
Bye bye.